Hello and welcome to another edition of our recycling podcast, Recycle, Don't Be a Waster. In today's episode, we want to cover what maybe not is the biggest story at the moment, but it will certainly become a big problem in a couple of years if people do not really come up with a good recycling solution. And that is the burgeoning waste from solar panels. Like all technologies, from televisions to anything else, there's early adopters, there's, when the next bunch, whatever that's called, and then there's the mass market. And clearly solar panels are become more widely accepted in Australia. And also, they're clearly improving. The behaviour, the performance, the efficiency of solar panels is improving all the time. And so what is happening, or expected to happen, is that there will be an awful lot more solar panels installed, removed, disposed of over the next few years. Some of the stats are pretty amazing. And I suppose what made us really produce this podcast today is that in Queensland, obviously the Sunshine State, so clearly I assume that solar panels will be more effective in Queensland than elsewhere. In Queensland, they are bringing in rules, or draft rules at the moment, that are expected to go ahead under the Palaszczuk government, that will basically, as part of its draft e-products waste action plan, that would in theory ban the dumping of solar panels within 5 to 10 years at landfill and fundamentally mandate that they are recycled. So, I suppose how big a problem is this? The problem really seems to be very large indeed. And I suppose we wanted to look at that. How big is the problem? Some of the news articles I'm reading here's one from the Guardian newspaper. It says that Queensland alone was on track to have a further 25 million solar panels installed across the state over the next decade, which would create up to 17,000 tonnes of landfill waste a year by 2030. Currently, solar panels account for 1,000 tonnes of yearly waste in Queensland. So basically, we don't want to see those solar panels. I think we can all agree on this. We don't want to see solar panels ending up in landfill waste. But I suppose how do we, first of all, the questions are, do people see this happening? Is it giving a bad reputation to, new greener energies where there's a lot of people argue that there are, hidden negatives? And thirdly, how do we actually recycle these things? What is the policy? So to date, it's been, we are dumping at landfill. In Queensland, 1,000 tonnes of solar, photovoltaic and battery storage was dumped in landfill across the state in 2019. And by all expectations are that this will significantly increase. So the government up there north of the border, has dedicated roughly $250,000 to a research on how this can be dealt with. So I suppose the first question is, can you recycle solar panels? The reality is, yes, you can. So look, we'll give a brief overview as to how this is done. And I'm taking this from a website called Ecoactive, ECOSETIF. And this is a brief 4-step overview as to how you would recycle solar panels. And in many regards, these are e-waste, and so they do include valuable materials from copper to rare earths to different aspects. I'm assuming lithium and stuff like that also, if there's a battery aspect to them. But I suppose we're focusing more on the panels. So the first step, they're collected by appropriate companies that focus on recycling. So that will be somebody dedicated to picking them up and bringing them either from a transfer centre or somewhere like that to a centralised plant. After the collection process, this is step 2. The facilities then shred them into millions of very tiny fine pieces. By doing this, the recyclers will have an easier time extracting the different recyclable parts of a solar panel. Step 3, then once you've shredded it, as always, you have to separate the pieces. So once shredding is done, the shredded pieces from the panels now undergo a separation process. 10 different detectors separate glass, copper wiring, steel, aluminium, silver paste, silicone, and any other recyclables. There are different kinds of detectors that can separate these materials successfully, such as detectors using colour or pattern sensors, magnetic technology, or any other advanced technologies depending on the materials. And then finally, recyclers provide the recycled materials to different industries for the manufacture of new items. I suppose one of the big benefits that the Queensland government is promoting with this is that this will help build Well, obviously, it prevents waste going to landfill, so we need fewer landfills, and clearly we're not dumping potentially toxic e-waste in landfills. And the argument is that this will lead to more modern technologies, more modern recycling plants, and create jobs, ensuring that this is a circular process. This sort of follows on from bans on e-waste in Victoria, which banned them from 2019. So we're proposing that this will stop this stuff going to landfill. I believe that this is already implemented on various types of e-waste in South Australia and the SET. And I think we'll probably do a future episode on how successful that is, how that's working out. So I suppose another question then is, the actual environmental impact or the lifetime of how long do recycling solar panels actually work. And realistically, I suppose as a country, we are pushing solar because we have a lot of solar energy. We've quite a regionally, geographically spread populace, and so localised energy production, such as solar, is very beneficial to us, particularly in a state like Queensland, where it's more geographically distributed than, say, New South Wales or Victoria. But clearly, as the technology improves, it's a bit like your television set. There will be an upgrading of to more efficient, more powerful, more effective things, and with that, there is an environmental downside. That are we factoring that into the environmental balance, or when we weigh up on the scales, coal-fired or traditional energy, polluting energy versus this newer clean or renewable energy, are we really balancing it correctly? So I think a real study needs to be done on that. Clearly, we should not be dumping these things at landfill. Clearly, they contain a lot of A, valuable materials, and B, potentially toxic materials if disposed of in the wrong way. So I think Queensland is certainly going down the right path. I think maybe in a future episode we might cover what is the useful life of a solar panel, just to see what the actual value of these things is, and how long, really, so we can do a proper analysis on the actual lifetime of a solar panel. I'm just going to actually do a quick Google on how long a solar panel lasts, because as we know, nearly all technology, it doesn't last forever. So here, Forbes magazine is saying that the industry standard for most solar panels is 25 to 30 years. Most reputable manufacturers offer production warranties for 25 years, and the average break-even point for solar panel energy savings occurs 6 to 10 years after installation. So I'm assuming that's a household where you invest, you pay for, there's a subsidy from government also, but you pay to some extent to install those solar panels, and then you save a little bit every year, and then after a number of years you should be in a profitable situation. So yes, that is the situation. Clearly we'll be adding huge amounts of, and obviously as homes are being renovated, etc., and there'll be damage, storm damage, natural attrition of these panels that are, of course, being placed on roofs. And let's be honest, Queensland is susceptible to, extreme weather conditions, and we've certainly seen that over the last number of years. So there will always be wear and tear. There will always be damage. I personally think it's a good idea to let's reduce landfill whenever possible. So if we can recycle these things, I think it's a very good idea. I'm always of the view we shouldn't be mandating stuff before we have an alternative. So clearly we should have an alternative recycling process system, and that covers collection through to recycling, through to where these parts, when we do recycle, where are they going to? Because again, we get into the same old story. If we do not have a manufacturing base in Australia, and if we're not making these products in Australia, where is this recycled material going to go, such as glass, etc.? I think that's certainly less of an issue for items, silver, copper, those aspects, aluminium. I think those are readily recyclable in Australia, but I think some of the other smaller niche items, that is where it could become difficult. I think we'll leave it there today. I think all in all, this is a good news story. I think it'd be foolish for this country not to have solar panels on a lot of roofs, certainly in the more sunny areas. And I think we're just going to see more of it. So I think this should go hand in glove. I think if we're installing solar panels, we shouldn't. It's a product stewardship, and we've covered that in previous articles. I think if you're manufacturing these panels, I think you should also be part of the solution to the lifetime or the disposal of them also. So we'll leave it there today, and I wish you everybody a good weekend. So remember, recycle, don't be a waster.